Okay, what do you want me to do?
You are going to test the new Titi commando. Is dot matter.
Okay, I hear it. What?
Very good, Randall.
Okay. What, just a bunch of Titi images? I don't want the chest. The chest is not that nice. I like the ones with the legs, and I have more legs.
Chocolate. One of the most alluring food items, with the power to evoke desire for its rich flavor as well as distinct color tones that can go from nearly black to warm, sweet, muted browns. There's just something enticing about the softer shades in particular that I can't help but be captivated by, which is perhaps why the next stop will receive. Titi manages to draw so much attention and why I'm sure a lot of people also want to pull her. But if you're not that interested in going completely bankrupt while doing that, then there's really only one place for you to go, which is Loot Bar, the best platform to top up in gacha games. In there you can buy all the pulls you want to guarantee your TT at a discounted price and the option for you to self-top up, that way no one gets your account credentials. All that with a 24/7 customer service, full refund guarantee, and a 4.9 score on Trustpilot with more than 45k reviews and tons of positive comments, so there's no need to worry about if you get your stuff or not. So make sure to use my link in either the description or pinned comment for a 6% discount to guarantee your Choco Cat. It can go as low as 23% cheaper than buying in-game when you add everything up. I'm very grateful to Loot Bar for sponsoring this video, so now let's get back to Titi. She's certainly one of the most unique recent tops in what she focuses at, where while most of the characters we usually get can be summarized with deals damage if you want to be extremely reductive, Titi actually focuses on a niche you haven't really seen shine for years at this point. So let's talk about her kit. That way I can justify to you why I'm 100% pulling for meta this time around. Starting with S1. This is the usual simple skill to introduce her kit, as most effects here are very basic. What it does is simply give Titi plus 100% attack and make so her hits have a 50% chance to put mobs to sleep for 3 seconds. Very simple stuff, but already here it serves to show what she's capable of, and it actually ties really well with her talent one, which is the most important part of Titi's kit, since every single one of her skills and synergies are tied to it. What it does is first make her able to attack sleeping mobs, since in case you don't know, they are usually untargetable by your ops unless they have something like this in their kit. Another thing it does is make her deal an additional 16% of her attack as arts when attacking non-mobile enemies, which are basically mobs that aren't moving. Again, another sleep synergy, since sleeping mobs also can't move until they wake up. But the most important part of this talent is this last portion. It makes so when she is deployed, every time an enemy sleeps on field, they'll start taking 32% of her attack as arts damage every second. So simply put, this is a global range dot for every sleeping mob on field. Kinda like how Blaze Altar increases the burn proc damage whenever she's deployed, and it's this effect in specific that makes this talent so important in her kit, since as you can see on both S1 and talent, 1TG does focus on sleep, an effect that has been basically neglected for a very long time, where even the few ops you got that have it in their kit either don't fully utilize it and have it more as a bonus or are very old ones at this point. So Titi is kind of an Exia altar of sleep in a sense, where just like how X buffs Laterano and MO ops, Titi does improve the performance of sleep ops with this talent. And just like how Exo doesn't just buff other ops but also herself, Titi also takes a lot out of this talent. For example, on her S1, this skill not only puts mobs to sleep, but it also gives her a plus 100% attack buff, which directly increases how much damage the talent does since the dot is based off of her attack. So Titi will both hit harder and heal her ops for more, as well as support sleeping the entire map even more while the skill lasts, which could be used together with other sleep ops if you wanted to. That's just not something I really recommend because of the weaknesses of this skill. The first and most obvious one is that the sleep is RNG, and Hypergriff didn't even try to help Titi by giving her multi-hit or letting her attack more than one target. She just keeps attacking like normal and has a very high chance of missing, and even when she applies it, it's just a 3-second sleep, so it doesn't even have that great of an effect in practice. Also, just to add insult to injury, they made this thing cost 40 SP, which is the highest cost out of all of her skills on the skill that does the least inside her kit. Suffice to say that I don't recommend anyone to invest in it unless you're very interested in meta like I am. Otherwise, you can just pretend this one doesn't exist.
新しい機種はもうないの？じゃあ私の出番なしね。 見えちゃったわ。
No.
こっそり
Oh,
私
there.
の服の白い帯を
Wait, what's that line? What is she saying? What's Nia?
I think
What's
I get what you say. Let's see if I'm right. Excuse me, Vargas.
I thought you can read. Wait,
I
hey, what?
see. I see.
So it's just canon that we were trying.
It is canon down there, but now it's there. You go. We're so back.
Next up we have S2.
聖水表面の石灰質を取り除いて大理石の彫刻に荘厳さを蘇らせる。青年は晴れによし誇りを払い清めて狂気の夕焼けの美しさを浮かび上がらせる。
Unlike S1, it actually feels like they tried to give her something more competitive with this one, and it's here that her kit starts to shine a lot more. What it does is make Titi stop attacking, gives her plus 180% attack, and makes both her and the lowest HP up in her range fall asleep. Then it'll also put every enemy around her and set up to sleep for the duration of the skill while increasing Talent 1's effectiveness by 3.3 times. There is actually a lot to unpack in how the skill works, and the first thing to talk about is this portion. Putting herself and another up to sleep achieves basically the same result as Kafka's S1. They all stop attacking and get 0 block, that way they can stay safe from enemy attacks. But in Titi's case it's actually a lot stronger because sleep makes her ops truly untargetable by enemy damage, while Kafka can still be affected by some of it, like Originum Slug's explosions for instance. Not just that, but the damage is also pretty great for its 20 SP cost. At M3 S2 can deal around 39k arts damage per skill, so she deals around 65% of his S3's total damage while costing 4 times less. The way she does that, even though S2 quite literally makes her stop attacking, is for her talent one. The one that basically applies a global dot to every sleeping mob on the map, and the same that you see getting buffed by 3.3 times on S2. And from that you can probably guess what S2's gameplay is like. This is a very strong defensive skill, since it can make any op that's low on HP effectively immune for the entirety of its duration, while also healing anyone in her range if her talent manages to damage something. A potentially very strong crowd control skill, since it places all mobs in such a hit area to sleep for up to 15 seconds at M3, which allows you to really disrupt a ton of enemies, as well as a surprisingly great damaging option for its cost. And as a bonus, since the skill buffs both her attack and the talent one's effectiveness, you can also use other sleeping skills like Kafka's S1 or Eblena's S2 anywhere in the map, and it will also be able to damage the same enemies as them, just like with her S1, since all the damage from the skill comes from her global range talent. Another aspect of it is her stall potential. If you're an older player, then you certainly do remember what is Sleep's most notorious application, mainly how it was used in certain CCs as a way to perma-stall the entire map on max risk clears, and in order for a Sleep skill to be able to do that, it needs to meet mainly 2 conditions. The first is to have no target cap. For example, Eblena's S2 does put mobs to sleep on a very good cycle, but you can only do it to 2 at a time, so it's very easy for mobs to break out of a stall involving her by simply having 3 or more of them, for instance. And the second condition is a good skill cycle. Even if an op can affect everyone in their range, if they are like Sora for instance, who only does it for 7 seconds while having a 60 SP cost skill, then there's just no way you're gonna be able to sustain a stall with them. And since Titi does all that so well, she is the overall best sleep staller in the game. In fact, she's so good at it that she can take the stall even further and make it much more accessible than before. One of the reasons a sleep stall is never used normally is the amount of setup it usually requires. For example, in CC8, the needed Black Knight being charged by least Carmental ops to keep the entire map in check. Not to mention how precise the skill activation timing had to be for it to work. But S2 cycle is so good that it's possible to make a perma setup with just Titi plus Tragora's S2 in the best case scenarios, so you get a much easier to use stall setup to play around with, that might even be relevant in a future CC if Hyperglyph wants to do another CC before kind of stage, especially because her range is just so good with this skill. Being able to convert any tile in her range into another source of the effect besides herself lets you reach a lot more places than you'd normally expect, and Titi can be very effective when you combine with the true AoE targeting it has even outside of just stalling, which then takes us to her talent too. What it does is simply give any up from Minas or Sargon plus 20 attack speed if they have 50% or more HP. Since I already made the comparison before, this is another extra talent that can help you out if you decide to bring one of those ops in your team. Sadly, the ops she buffs aren't as busted as the ones Exo does, but even in here there are some pretty popular ones like Nara Passenger, and the talent does benefit Titi herself, so you can take it as a nice bonus inside her kit. Back to S2 though, it's time to talk about its weaknesses, because as good as everything I talked about might sound, like there are some caveats. Starting from the minor ones, we have her damage. Like I said, 40k total arts on a skill with such a good cycle is very great, so much so that I even compared it to Wei, but keep in mind that Titi doesn't have any res ignore, so the damage scales very poorly with res. This is a minor issue in the sense that S2 isn't a full-blown DPS skill in the first place, and the damage is more than serviceable to use it to hold back mobs when your mobs are on downtime and you want something to stall away while they recover SP and she heals them. But remember that Titi is an incantation medic, so her healing is dependent on how much damage she deals, meaning that if you're against the mobs with a lot of res, she can struggle to keep up and you might even need to throw another healer in there to make up for it. The second issue is that she uses sleep to crowd control mobs. That might not seem like a big deal at first until you realize just how many bosses are immune to it. I mentioned Dragoda before. He's basically the best staller in the game, and the big reason for that is how it's almost impossible to resist his crowd control. But if you take a look at just the story bosses, you see that almost every one of them is immune to sleep, so Titi has basically no effect against them other than being able to protect herself and another rob by putting both to sleep, meaning that the permastall strat I mentioned is only really doable against elites if you want to use it, so a lot of the potential this skill might have had will end up just not working out. Overall though, this is a great skill. At the end of the day, Titi is a medic. She might be from the same archetype as Reed, who is notorious for being a great damage dealer, but she's meant to be a more defensive take on Reed's kit, and in that aspect this skill works really well to protect and heal your ops while also allowing for some really good stalling on top of it, especially because you don't even need to do her permastall combos and can instead simply pair her with a variety of ops to abuse her great cycling, so it's definitely worth investing on it if you plan to use Titi.
払い清めて陶器の釉薬の美しさを浮かび上がらせる
Okay, then how do you think she can do against the bear?
What is she? She's a ground unit or no? She's a healer. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the bear is sleep immune.
Then isn't she useless then? Why did you bring her? Hey.
Can you save Jessica Demo?
手入れ
No, because you can't.
Ah!
Wait, what?
Look at her! Demo.
もうないの
Wait, why is he not moving? Why is he not moving?
You see them, but the bear is immune to sleep, but he has this mechanic where he's going after
Hey, no. Isn't this cheating?
Lastly, then we have S3.
ハンス表面に石灰質を取り除いて大理石の彫刻に荘厳さを蘇らせる
This is Titi's more offensive-oriented skill for stronger waves. What it does is give her plus 180% attack, makes her attack 2 enemies, puts every mob she attacks to sleep for 5 seconds, and makes so whenever a mob wakes up, they take up to 460% of her attack as arts damage while transferring the 5 second sleep to another enemy near them. You can basically think of it as her read as 3. It grants her the big attack increase and multi-target attack that can spread to other mobs, where this time instead of a big explosion that crushes your device, she spreads sleep around. On S3, Titi actually has a special kind of status that I'm just gonna call sleep transfer. The way it works is that once S3 is active, she'll apply this status to any mob that's put to sleep, and the longer they remain with it, the more damage they take, up to 460% of her attack after 5 seconds. Then once they either wake up, die, or the skill lands, the game will both deal the aforementioned damage and put another mob in a 1.5 tile radius of them to sleep. It's also possible to make it spread to 2 mobs instead of 1 if you manage to make so they die specifically to the wake up damage because of a fun interaction where the game will counter as both of them waking up and dying at the same time, so it just sends 2 of those at once. That's how she can spread it without having Reed's explosion, and since she will keep applying normal sleep with her attacks, her target shouldn't really be able to move on inside her range. Also, if you remember, I said she applies this to every mob that's put to sleep, meaning that you can also do it outside her attack ranges in other ops, and the mobs affected will also receive sleep transfer. So on top of the attack increase as 3 gifts or talent 1, you have yet another synergy with sleep ops in case you want to bring her together with them. As for the damage, it's a lot higher than S2 as you would expect. If you add everything up, the normal attacks, dot, and wake up damage, you'll see that she deals around 100k total damage as arts. All that on top of all the crowd control S3 provides. And as a small bonus, it will also prevent any allied op that dies inside her range from being retreated. When that happens, she'll instead put them to sleep and start healing them until either the HP is full or the skill lands, at which point they'll wake up. So so you even get free mortality to complement everything you've seen up until now. Which then takes us to her module. What it does is upgrade her trait to heal even more per attack and buffs her talent one. So instead of an extra 15% attack to non-mobile mobs, you deal 30%. And the main portion of it, which is her global dot, gets buffed from 30% of her attack every second to 40% at level 3. Since this is Titi's main form of damage and support to sleep ops, you might think it's a must build for her. And I would be inclined to agree, since not only you get much more healing, but the damage increase is very noticeable. I wouldn't say this is a must build module like Sakiko's if you're low on resources, but I recommend you go for at least level 2 if that's your case. Back to S3, though we do need to talk about its weaknesses, which is where I feel the skill starts to fall behind S2, with the first being the damage. Titi's total damage per skill on top of all those effects might sound high, but just like with S2, S3 doesn't have any rest red or ignore. For S2 I said that wasn't a big deal, but it's a bit different here since the skill is supposed to be more offensive. And still on that topic, we have another damage related issue caused by another problem I mentioned in the S2 section, which is the fact that a lot of bosses are immune to sleep. Not only does that make so Titi can't CC them, but since most of the damage in S3 does come from her dot and wake up damage, around 57k to be more precise, that also means most of that will be lost against the bosses. This is a lot better than in S2's case, since she will at least be able to do a portion of her damage to sleep immune mobs, but combined with the lack of res ignore, I really wouldn't recommend using her against those anyway. This wouldn't really be an issue if it wasn't for the last problem with S3, which is that it's putting mobs to sleep. Like I said at the very start of the video, only a handful of mobs can even target a sleeping enemy, so if I use Titi's S3 to hold off a big wave, what you're also doing is making them immune to any damage that's not her own. You can't even pair her with someone like you, for instance, to at least apply a ton of burn to them, because they simply cannot take elemental injury from him in that state. That is also a problem on S2, but since the skill places everyone in range to sleep and has a better cycle without a ramp up time, that one is usually better at dealing with huge waves, especially if you combo her with someone like Dragode or an SP battery to stall them even more. Something that S3 has a harder time doing is it needs to spread the sleep around, does it affect all mobs in range at once, and has a longer downtime period. Funny enough, because of this problem, the fact that a lot of bosses are immune to sleep can actually be a benefit for Titi in some cases, since you won't make them also immune to your ops damage, but it can still get in the way against elites. The situations where S3 wins against S2 then are usually when you want Titi to deal with stronger mobs or to attack things by herself, since it doesn't require another op to be in range for her to reach as far as she can. Or if you want to play the more niche sleep comp, since it allows for more stress with her sleep transfer thing. Overall, S3 is more niche than S2, it doesn't have the same kinds of synergy since that skill is just so well designed to fit anywhere with that crazy good cycle. But especially if you do intend to bring Titi everywhere and find yourself against higher res elites, it is a good one to have in your back pocket, so I suggest you raise it depending on your situation, or if you're a meta player like me who can see the real value in Titi. Overall, Titi is a very well designed op in the way that she sticks with sleep and manages to interact well with any other character that also uses that status effect. The biggest problem most people would have with her isn't even her fault per se, but it's more that sleep isn't exactly easy to use. It makes so your ops can't attack mobs, make mobs not receive attacks from her ops, and overall is still mostly neglected by Hypergriff. I made a lot of comparisons with Exia Alter, and for all intents and purposes Titi is the EXO of sleep, but the issue with that comparison is that it takes two to dance. Exia's synergies with Laterano and demo ops are really good, and the huge reason for that also comes from the fact that a lot of those ops are stronger themselves. We have Ella, Executor Alter, or Lemwen for instance, who not only have good kits themselves, but also synergize back with X with their talents and kits. Sleep though, like I said before, doesn't really get many ops that apply it, and when it does they usually just do it for themselves without interacting with the other characters that are part of this niche. So Titi's synergies, even if strong on paper, still lacks a proper support network to really shine. Thankfully she isn't a synergy bot, so you can just use her normally or even pair together with other ops outside of sleep to great effect as mentioned before. But then we have the biggest issue with recommending someone to pull her, which is the Ascalon effect. It doesn't matter how cool or well designed or genuinely good Titi's kit is. The next banner we're expecting has an abomination capable of nuking entire maps with minimal effort, so it's quite literally impossible to recommend someone to pull for her unless you really like Titi and her kit or is a very meta-oriented player like myself. If you do want to see more of her though, then I suggest you join my Discord server so you can see me pull Titi and maybe even use the mailing command that I'll 100% have ready for her by the time you get there. Comment what you think of Titi, leave a like and subscribe before you go though. And if you want to support me, get early access to videos, Discord privileges, or even appear on Neblana special plays, you can also consider becoming a member. I'll also think you're really cool if you do that.
ハンス新しい機種はもうないの？じゃあ私の出番なしね。
That's it then. Bye.
予想よりずっと古い年代のものね。倉庫整理もたまにはこういう大発見があるのよ。みかんサフラブでも飲んでお祝いしましょうか。